I found it.
All right. We're going to call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Good evening and welcome to the April 7th, 2026 Committee of the Whole and Special Council meeting. All members of council are present and there is a quorum, and Mayor Gail Smith will be joining us via Zoom. The meeting is being held in person and is also being live streamed on YouTube. I'd like to acknowledge the members of the public that are, listening online this evening. We appreciate the diverse population that we have living in Middleton. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
So move. Second.
The move and second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Presentations 3.1, Joint Climate Action Plan, What We Heard Report, Genevieve Bullock. Clean Foundation. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
There, you have the presentation on there. Thank you very much. So thank you all very much for having me today. Yeah, I met most of you, but my name is Genevieve Bullock and I work as a climate lead with the Clean Foundation under their, this is a tongue twister, Community Climate Capacity Program. So we've been working on a regional action plan for the town of Middleton, the town of Annapolis Royal, and the county of Annapolis. You can skip ahead to the next slide. So yeah, we work with, I believe it's 29 communities as of right now through the program, and we're trying to help build capacity in rural municipalities and other communities in Nova Scotia to take on more climate adaptation initiatives. So these are the communities we're currently working with. Skip to the next slide there. So yeah, we're working with the 3 municipalities all along the Annapolis River. They came to these 3 municipalities applied to the Clean Foundation together as they share many similar climate change objectives. So they're going to be working together. We're going to do a regional climate action adaptation plan, but we'll also be focusing on each individual municipality and their own needs. Skip to the next slide there. So this last year, we've been working on public engagement. The goals of that were we wanted to gather public input on climate related concerns, identify local priorities. We wanted to map out different climate vulnerabilities and areas that community members value. We wanted to educate and build a bit of awareness about different climate adaptation and mitigation strategies. And we wanted to build a bit of a sense of ownership and collaboration among residents. You can skip to the next slide there. We participated in a couple of community events. There was a climate fair held in Annapolis Royal in November of 2024. 67 people participated. There were various booths and presentations from different local environmental groups. So that was a little bit of an educational component. And then we had a booth at the Annapolis River Festival where there was a little bit of a mapping activity and a kids solar beading booth. Both of these were a bit more of an educational component and no quantitative data was collected at either of these. You can skip to the next slide there. And then in terms of public engagement where we collected data, we had a climate survey that went out about this time last year, and that was open for 3 weeks. We hosted a technical workshop here in Middleton, and we held 3 community mapping sessions in each of the 3 municipalities this last fall. Let me skip to the next slide. Yeah, as mentioned, the online survey ran for 3 weeks. There was 19 questions available through a QR code on a couple of different municipal platforms. And through that, we wanted to identify the main climate risks people were concerned about, community priorities, and start thinking about different policy preferences. You can skip to the next slide there. In the full report document, it'll go through all of the survey questions, but I just wanted to highlight here the demographic of participants and highlight the gap in youth engagement. It was quite low, so we're going to be looking into the spring. We're going to be going into schools in each of the municipalities, and we're going to be educating kids about climate change and also gauge a sense of their understanding and see if there's anything they'd like to do to get involved. You can skip to the next slide there. The technical workshop was hosted here in Middleton at the NSCC. We had different environmental NGOs, municipal staff members, and other interest holders participate. There was a guided discussion. We talked about different climate impacts in the area and how to best approach them as a region. And then we had a short survey and also a mapping exercise. Let's get to the next slide there. The mapping sessions, we used different colored sticky notes and markers, and we had great big maps blown up. I think a lot of you were there, and we had great big maps blown up of each municipality, and we asked people to identify areas that they knew there were different climate hazards or impacts. And then we also identified community assets and critical infrastructure in each municipality. We also had a vote for action board, a feedback wall, and a little youth corner. You can skip to the next slide there. For anyone that wasn't there, this is kind of what the maps looked like. So the different colored stickies were associated with either a different hazard or a community asset. So this is Annapolis Royal, and probably to no huge surprise, the blue symbolized flooding and sea level rise. And so that was a huge concern for that area. The black stickers identified critical infrastructure. The green ones, I believe, were invasive species. So it's nice to get a sense of what a community has as a whole, and like what might be at risk and what different strategies we could implement in each municipality. And you can see up to the next slide there. So what we did with that was we have a GIS specialist at Clean, and he was able to make this great big map. So this includes all the points from all of the municipal mapping sessions. So I think there was like, on all the maps, there was over 500 points of either places people were concerned about or places that people valued in their community. You can skip to the next one there. This one is a little breakdown of Middleton. The purple there is cultural sites and community resources. We mapped out vulnerable populations. There is some wildfire markings. That wasn't people necessarily concerned about actual fire, but maybe more so degradation of air quality or dense woodlots that might be at risk. You can hop to the next slide there. So this is a breakdown of the biggest concerns that came from the mapping session. So you can see, probably to, once again, to no one's surprise, Annapolis Royal is very concerned about flooding. All people in all the municipalities were quite concerned about that. Wildfire is a huge concern in the county. And this also highlighted all of the community resources and cultural sites in the area. There's a lot of points on the map for critical infrastructure, especially in Middleton. You can go to the next slide there. So in terms of the number of people we reached, there were 67 participants in the climate fair. We had 152 people complete the climate survey. 103 people visited the Riverfest booth. 33 people attended the community mapping session. 10 to the stakeholder technical workshop, and that brings us to 365 people engaged within the community, which we were pretty happy with. And you can skip to the next slide there. The overarching themes that we identified were flooding, as all the three municipalities are along the Annapolis River and the Annapolis Basin. That was probably the biggest concern, as well as wildfire and the impact that wildfire has on emergency services and access to water. Erosion too along the Annapolis River, and drought. People were quite concerned about wells going dry after this past dry season, and access to water in case of wildfire. You can skip to the next one there. We also identified 4 themes that we think would be coming, that people mentioned that maybe we weren't outright asking people about right off the bat. There's a lot of concerns about invasive species and how they've changed over the last few years with like the onset of ticks and the impact that might have on species at risk, especially in the county with Atlantic salmon and barn swallows. A lot of recommendations from people on how we can best start transitioning to renewable energy sources. There's a lot of emphasis put on communication and collaboration, a lot of support for regional climate planning. One resident commented that climate change doesn't respect municipal borders, so working all together is wonderful. And then a lot of people were mentioning residential planning to account for future sea level rise, erosion, wildfire, and access to groundwater. You can skip to the next slide there. So yeah, some of the key takeaways that we found through this is there's a lot of support for the regional climate action plan. Residents really appreciate consistent communication from council and also Clean Foundation. People were asking to prioritize ongoing public engagement, reporting back to the community. And people were very much in support of early implementation and high impact actions, such as taking flood risk really seriously. And you can skip to the next slide there. So the next steps that we're taking from a Clean Foundation standpoint is we're taking like the social aspect, the public feedback, and then incorporating that with more the scientific background, so emissions inventories and different climate risk studies that we have. And we're kind of combining those and looking at the best possible actions to implement in the climate action plan. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have a plan now to go into high schools in each of the municipalities. So that's going to happen, I believe, between April 29th and May 22nd this spring. We're hoping to run that with a photo contest where people can submit photos of places that they value in their community, as well as if they have photos of past floods or fires or different climate hazards to help illustrate what's going on in the community. Once we have a draft of the climate action plan, we'll be presenting to council, and then we can incorporate any feedback that they might have, and as well as the engagement results from the youth engagement. We'll finalize the plan and hopefully begin some of the implementation this coming fall and winter. But yeah, you can skip to the next slide. And thank you for having me, and thank you to everyone that participated in public engagement and put the word out there to residents. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Genevieve. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Genevieve?
Just a couple, maybe a couple of quick questions. At what point do we do, before we implement a whole plan, is there going to be an overlap of the scientific data that says these are the areas that are at risk, and then there's the community area feedback that says these are what we think they are, kind of thing, right? You know, is there going to be an overlap to confirm they are contiguous with one another?
We'd like to do that. It kind of depends on, I know that, I think, does Middleton's council, do you guys take a break over the summer months?
August.
Yeah, okay, just for August. So yeah, it might depend a little bit on that, but it would be really nice to, after incorporating the first bit of data with the initial public engagement results, it would be really nice to bring it out to the public again and get some feedback before actually finalizing the plan. But it might just depend on the timeline and the availability of people, but we'd really like to do that.
And the other thing I noted that Middleton's responses to the storm surge question were fairly low. Largely because we don't have storm surge here. The second part of that question was extreme weather events.
Yeah.
And we have had serious impacts of extreme weather in this area. Is it worth splitting that question? Because you're asking, you're kind of leading one thing, because we don't really have a tidal surge situation here. You go, oh, okay, but you don't read the second half of that kind of thing. And just in terms, if you're going to do it again, fine tune some of those things so that you can get real responses, kind of things. If we're going to make policy based on Middleton doesn't think storm surge is an issue, because it isn't, but we're skipping the thing that does affect us because people accidentally skipped it, then that impacts our ability to make policy.
Yeah, that's a good question to highlight. I think I only started in this position in October, and I jumped right into
Well, I'm
this
not
public
criticizing,
engagement.
I'm
Oh,
just-
no. It is good to know this was like this was an approach that we'd used in other communities, and many of the communities we work with are right on the coast and experience like sea level rise, storm surge. And so this maybe that question in particular wasn't necessarily catered.
Yeah, because if you're in Annapolis, Royal, or anywhere, Port George, anywhere along the coast, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we are still impacted by extreme weather. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a hurricane roll through and half the town didn't have power for
Yeah.
weeks, kind of thing, right? So like, it certainly impacts us. But if we're focusing on one thing that, you know,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a good thing to highlight and I'll make note of it. I think for youth engagement, we've been coming up with some questions and topics to engage youth on. And instead of focusing on sea level rise as much, I think we're going to focus on flooding as a whole and what the future with extreme weather is going to look like. So yeah, thank you for asking.
Sure. Any other questions or comments for Genevieve?
No, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
I know that those of us that were there at the NSCC, the mapping session, I thought it was very informative. And I think all of us, we took something from that session, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it was great, thank you.
No, it was great to see. It was great to see how much people and council values their community and what people love about it. It was nice to get an understanding from like a climate change, like more of a scientific perspective, but also just to see how much folks care about their community was really special.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Proclamation 4.1. You're welcome to stay, but thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
All right, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Proclamation 4.1 Volunteer Week, April 19th to 25th, 2026. Volunteer Week, ignite volunteerism. Whereas 24 million Canadians give their time through formal and informal types of volunteering, contributing close to 5 billion volunteer hours per year. And whereas volunteers in Middleton mentor our children, support those feeling isolated, beautify our green spaces, and fundraise for our charitable organizations. And whereas volunteers in Middleton have stepped up to support families, friends, neighbors, and strangers, people standing up to systemic racism, people sharing insights on how to create a more just and equitable society. And whereas the Middleton's volunteers are individuals, families, workers, retirees, community members of all ages and backgrounds. And whereas the collective result of the work done by our town's volunteers is that Middleton is a more desirable place to live. Therefore, I, Gary Marshall, Deputy Mayor of Middleton, do hereby proclaim April 19th to 25th, 2026 as Volunteer Week in the town of Middleton, and urge my fellow citizens to recognize and celebrate every volunteer and each contribution they're making to strengthen inclusivity and well-being in our communities. Dated at Middleton, Nova Scotia, the 7th day of April, 2026. Thank you. Approval of the minutes. The in-camera meetings from February 2nd, 2026, March 2nd, 2026, the special in-camera meeting minutes from March 23rd, 2026, and the committee of the whole and special committee of the whole meeting minutes have been circulated. Are there any corrections, errors, or omissions to the minutes? Anybody? We'll show the minutes approved and circulated. Anything by citizens? Is there anything CA Proctor by citizens? Oh, very well. New business. 7.1 RFD 027-2026 special by-election. CAO Crocker.
Can you deputy mayor?
So the RFD is before you, and this RFD models the one that we presented for the last election for those of you that were here. So there are a dozen or so motions, separate motions that do have to be read, that each deal with different things. But just to kind of go through the background section, we are required to hold a special by-election when a vacancy occurs on council. Except where the vacancy arises within 6 months of a regular election, which this does not. Section 13.1 of the Municipal Elections Act requires council within 4 weeks of the vacancy to name a day for a special election. And because we received notice from former Councillor Fournier on March 20th, our regular council meeting is not until April 20th. So we wanted to make sure we set that date tonight, so we do have a special council meeting after committee of the whole tonight to go through and approve the motions in this RFD as well. So a special election requires a minimum of 60 days to administer. The election day must fall on a Saturday and be held no more than 11 weeks after the council meeting at which the date is set, which is today, April 7th. based on these requirements, the special election must take place on a Saturday before June 23rd, 2026. The last paper ballot election was held in 2008. They're generally more cumbersome to administer, less votes. In contrast, e-voting is more streamlined, less resource intensive, easier for staff and voters. It is slightly more expensive to do e-voting, but staff do recommend moving forward with e-voting, and we've provided some cost comparisons in the financial section. But council, of course, can choose to go with paper ballot voting, which is in the alternative section. So a few other points about elections. So there must be a nomination day. So the Elections Act requires that a nomination day for a special election has to be the fourth Tuesday preceding the ordinary polling day, which is your regular election day. For advanced polls, the act does provide for an advanced poll. So that could be on Tuesday, June 9th, the fourth day before the regular poll that we're proposing on June 13th for the regular election. Council can select one other day or delegate its authority to select the first advanced poll to the returning officer. The choices would be either June 4th or June 6th. With the use of electronic voting, a polling period can begin on the first date of June 4th and just continue for the entire period up to the close of the poll day. Whereas if you go paper ballot votes, you can only have a specific day for the advanced polls. And then there's just a note in there about the preliminary list. So there's a preliminary list of voters that has to be advertised in newspapers. And we have that from last time. And then there's some public education that we recommend that returning officer conduct at least one information session with potential candidates, just so they understand the role and responsibilities of a town councillor. And create some informational materials to circulate to candidates. So in the financial implications section, we have included $10,386 in the approved 26-27 operating budget for this by-election expense. We've given two cost estimates based on some quotes and estimates that we based that on last election, and also attached as RFD, we included the actual cost of the 2024 election so that council could see what it did actually cost us. So you can see that e-voting would cost roughly $8,500, paper voting just over $5,500. So there is about a $3,000 difference in paper ballot voting versus e-voting. And then in the alternative section, we do have that council could direct staff to use paper ballot voting. And I guess there isn't much to explain, other than there are 12 different motions there that go through, or 10 different motions that go through setting the dates for the nomination days, the advanced polls, the election day, and various other things. And we made these date proposals based on the availability of staff to do the election. And then the requirements in the Elections Act, obviously. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. As you heard, we have several motions related to the special by-election.
I move council authorize expenditures for June 2026 municipal election up to $10,386.
Second.
Discussion?
Do have two questions, but I can ask them at the end of this or before this, because there's a whole series of motions here.
Councilor,
A full series of books.
there is, but if it's related to the first question,
Quick question on the finance side of things. We're taking, for the returning officer budget, we're allotting for the returning officer as a separate budget over and above the existing salary, or does one get put on pause while the other one works? You know what I mean?
So the returning officer would have to come in on a Saturday to do, say, the election. So that would be over and above what we typically budget for overtime for that particular position. So that's why it's included in here.
Okay, fair enough. That's fine. And the only other question is, are we making an accommodation for people that don't have access to a computer or electronic device? Can they come into town hall during the election and vote in the hall or so?
My understanding is yes, that last time, Sarah, you had a computer set up downstairs, and if somebody came in and wanted to vote, Sarah would go down and walk them through the process and help them if they needed it.
Yeah, as long as there's accommodation, but great.
Counselor Smith.
Just to clarify the first point that was made. I understand coming in on a Saturday and obviously being paid for that. But there's several election type things that happen throughout a day. Up to and including nomination day and things like that. How do we, and given that our returning officer is our staff member? How do we separate the costs of each, or do we?
So this is just the overtime for election day in here, so the regular,
The returning officers pay their normal town wages.
Yeah.
When they're doing, even when they're doing election stuff.
Yeah.
During the day.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Any further discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I move council give authority through the CAO to appoint assistant returning officer or officers.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council agree to implement fully electronic telephone and internet election with the electronic election platform provided by IntelliVote, sorry, Systems Incorporated for the 2026 special by-election.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council set nomination day as Tuesday, May 19th, 2026.
Second,
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I move council set the dates for the advanced polling period from Thursday, June 4th, 2026 to close of the voting on a regular polling day of June 13th, 2026.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussions?
Just a quick question on that. Is that necessary? Because we're gonna have basically a whole month of voting. Do we need an advance poll? Where we don't have paper
In case
ballots?
there's residents that are going to be away.
But where you can vote through the entire election. If I do
But
it.
that's what it's called, I think, is
what it is.
that
Okay.
anything before ordinary polling day
It's called
is
advanced.
called the advanced poll.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a particular day, it's a period of days.
so just like the electronic voting information wouldn't go out before June 4th, or they
Right,
wouldn't be able to use it before June 4th today.
yes, and if we were doing paper ballots, which we're not, because you just passed the e-vote
Yeah.
motion, but if we were doing paper ballots, we would have 1 or 2 advanced poll days before the regular election day, and you wouldn't be able to vote every day
Yeah.
before the election.
Okay.
Can I add something? I'd just like to mention that since 2016, the town, we've moved to e-voting. And the advantage to e-voting is advanced polling is open for a period of time, which allows residents to me, the more flexibility to vote. So hopefully the idea is to capture those votes that we might not get on a regular paper ballot. So the other thing about electronic voting is when the day that the polling ends, the results are
Instant.
instant.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that.
So that's why this works, right? So anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
We lose the thrill of counting all the ballots, though.
And have making a mistake.
Real or work.
It was exciting back in the day.
But it's. Ready for the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council authorizes the use of the Nova Scotia Permanent Registry of Voters provided by Elections Nova Scotia as a preliminary list of electors for the 2026 municipal elections in Middleton.
Don't,
I'll second that.
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council agrees that in addition to the methods mandated by the Municipal Elections Act, to notify the public of the preliminary list of electors and revision methods, that it be left of the discretion of the returning officer to determine additional notification mechanisms that will improve the accuracy of electors lists.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I move that council authorize election staff to continue to amend the electors list database in conjunction with the electronic voting system up to and including regular election polling day.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council authorize the returning officer to conduct election education and other information sessions for potential candidates.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move it- oh, go ahead.
I move council authorize the holding of the special by-election on Saturday, June 13th, 2026.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. All right. 7.2, RFD 028-2026 operating budget update for the 2026-2027. Director of Finance, Profit.
Thank you. RFD 22-2026 that was presented to council at last week's special council meeting. We did notice that there was an error in the income statement for that, so we do need to do a transfer from reserves to balance the budget of the $18,797. That would be in accordance with the Municipal Government Act. We are required to deliver a balanced budget. So we did review that all the motions that were passed are still accurate, but we do need to add in the transfer from reserves to balance the budget. And in the budget document, the only slides that changed as a result of this were slides 26, 27, 120, and 121. And you have a motion in front of.
All right, thank you, Director of Finance.
Yeah.
So operating budget update, what are your wishes?
I'll move the town council approve version 4 of the 2026-2027 town general operating budget as presented with the total expenditures of $5,095,585 and a balanced budget of 0.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. RFD 029-2026 low income tax exemption. Director of Finance, Profit. You're on again.
The town of Middleton provides a tax exemption for residents who qualify under the low income tax exemption policy. To be eligible, applicants must submit a prescribed application form, which is available on the town's website, along with their most recent notice of assessment by July 31st each year. Policy was last updated April 2025 and setting the tax exemption of $310 for households with incomes up to $25,700. Since that time, the Nova Scotia Consumer Price Index has increased by 1.7%. That's between periods of March 2025 to February 2026. So in response to inflation, staff is proposing adjustments to both the exemption amount and the eligible household income threshold. So we are asking to increase 310 to 320, and the annual household income to 26,100, sorry, yes, $26,100.
Thank you.
And you have a motion for you.
So you have a motion in front of you. What are your wishes?
I move council approve the proposed revisions of the low income tax exemption policy and increase the exemption amount to $320 and the household income not exceeding $26,100.
Second that.
Discussion? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. 7.4 RFD 030-2026, transfer 2025 to 2026 surplus to operating reserve. Director of Finance Profit.
Thank you. Each year, the town may realize either surplus or deficit in its operating budget, depending on actual revenues and expenditures compared to budget. Any surplus represents funds that were not required to support operations during the fiscal year. Maintaining adequate reserve balances is a key component to the town's long-term financial sustainability and risk management strategy. Operating reserves provide funding source for unforeseen expenditures, revenue shortfalls, and future budgetary pressures. The exact amount of the transfer will not be known until completion of the 2025-2026 year-end and audit process. The transfer will not impact current year's budget, but it will increase the balance of the operating reserve. The last forecast presented to council on March 16th was as of January 31st and showed a forecasted deficit of $12,699. After that presentation, we reviewed more information specifically from the Department of Justice and updated 25-26 invoices for our CDP services, and that has now created an additional savings due to officers being hired later than budgeted. We now estimate a surplus of approximately $35,000 for the 2025-2026 fiscal year. Given that council wishes to fund its 2026-2027 operating deficit before transfers of $18,797 via the prior year's surplus in the operating reserve, staff must have the authorization from council to transfer any and all 2025-2026 actual surplus to the operating reserve at year end. Otherwise, any surplus will roll into retained earnings and will not be available in the operating reserve.
Thank you. There's a motion before you. What are your wishes?
Move the council authorize staff to transfer any actual operating surplus from the 2025-2026 fiscal year at year end to the operating reserves.
Second that.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you. Fine. 8.1, community concerns, complaints as of March 2026. CEO Crocker.
Thank you. So there are a couple completed ones since we last presented this. Specifically, the signage at the Needs has been removed, so it's not impeding the vision there when you're coming down Bridge Street. And Public Works has fixed the sidewalk that was an issue near Foodland, as well as a pothole on Bridge Street. There is an additional complaint there, aside from that one, about the large EFR trucks that collect commercial waste and driving on side streets. So we have spoke with Valley Waste on this, and Valley Waste manages residential garbage, not commercial. So the commercial businesses in town would have their own contracts directly with EFR. So we've sent a letter to EFR, and as of today, I haven't heard back. That letter was just sent last week, so.
Thank you. 8.2, dangerous and unsightly premises report as of March 2026. CEO Crocker.
Thank you. So I didn't prepare this report, but I just put my name on it in case there's questions that I need to take back to the bylaw enforcement officers. But this report was presented, I think, in December. And for the first time since the County of Annapolis bylaw enforcement officers have taken over dangerous and unsightly premises administration of that bylaw and policy. And since then, there is a new manager of protective services with the County of Annapolis as well, Sean Amos. So he's now appointed as the dangerous and unsightly administrator, if you remember from our appointment list. So there are some notes there next to some residences that the the files have been closed and there's still some that are, I guess, active files that are still being investigated.
Thank you. I should have asked any question. Counselor Smith?
I thought we talked about this before, but would it be possible to have the house number on that report? Instead of just the street name, so that if we did want to review the situation ourselves or address any issues with neighboring residents that we might know what property they're talking about?
So I did ask, the county staff that, and when they looked into it, they said that, even though the report's a public document, they don't release detailed information per, certain sections of the MGA, with respect to like private information. So, they gave me the section here, but it says the individual's name, address, or telephone number, would be considered. So we did have it on our previous reports. That's probably my fault because I wasn't aware of that piece of legislation, but they were, and they're structuring the reports, similar to how they structure theirs.
I understand that, but something like Main Street, which runs the entire length of our town, we're not gonna know what property that they're talking about, so.
But it's up to them to administer the bylaw, not counselors.
It's our bylaw. We're the ones dealing with the complaints as much as anybody else. But we're not allowed to know what property that they're talking about?
According to this, no. Not the specific address be released.
I feel that handcuffs our ability to do our job.
Well, if somebody has a complaint that comes to us or comes to you, the direction should be that they make the complaint through the proper channels, which is through the dangerous and unsightly administrator. That's how it gets logged and that's how it gets addressed, not through me and not through staff here, not through council here.
But if people want to make a complaint, they can come to the town hall.
And we would refer them to the proper individual at the county of Annapolis.
So we're not even taking the complaints anymore.
No.
I don't like that.
Well, you can take one, but we have to refer them to the proper channels.
But are we taking the complaint and then passing the written document off, or are we just saying, that's good to know, but you need to call this number?
We're telling them to call the right number because there's too much information that can be lost in us trying to take a specific complaint. Like with animal control, for instance, the county of Annapolis bylaw enforcement officers also administer our animal control bylaw. And if we try to take the complaint and pass it along, then it's not always translated properly. Like the person that's making the complaint needs to make it to the right person. I agree.
Counselor Hirschwald.
Kind of empathize with what Councilor Smith's saying, that and we get customers in the store, there are residents come in the store all the time, want to talk about something. And you come to your counselor, say, okay, I'm mad about this, I'm mad about that. First question I asked, are you president? They'll say, no, you're from Calgary. But if you go to your counselor, talk to your counselor says, gotta go to staff, and which we do, we refer to staff says, oh, I can't talk to us, go talk to, that's 3 leaps you've gone to. The time you get to 13, you've given up. And I can see a frustration from the citizenry that's just not working. So right now, I don't know how to fix that or whether they're going to do an effort on that, but that I can certainly see people getting genuinely frustrated with that. I know I went to my counselor and I said, hey, I've got a problem. Counselor said, okay, go talk to staff. Yeah, that's great. You can't talk to us, talk to so-and-so. And I wouldn't be happy at the end of that, even if I got resolution there. So
I do get that, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we're such a small town that we just don't have the internal staff that is knowledgeable about everything that as a town and municipal government we're required to be knowledgeable about. So the same thing when people come in with building and planning and fire inspection questions, I refer them to the appropriate person. I just had someone ask today who they could contact. And Sarah is here from a coordinator perspective for planning, but she's not a planner, and she's not a development officer. So sometimes people come to her, but she has to refer them on to Brighter Community Planning, which is who we've contracted to do that service for us. So I understand and I do get it that it is frustrating to maybe call town hall and be asked to call someone else. But it's not always great either if we take a complaint, relay it incorrectly to the right person, and then it ends up causing more work for everybody at the end of the day as well. So I do understand, I'm just not sure that there's a great fix for it, given that we have multiple services that we have to contract out to different entities that do actually have that expertise and knowledge and education and experience to deal with those specific things, as opposed to staff here that do not.
Counselor Smith.
I completely agree with all of that. I just think there's a difference between taking the information from a resident and passing it on versus solving their particular problem, be it planning or anything else. We are continuing to outsource our ability to service our residents, and eventually we're not gonna be needed at town hall. And that's my fear, is that the only thing that they're going to be doing here is paying their water bill and their property tax bill. And I would like to think that we're providing more service than that. I understand, but we can't lose sight of the fact that we are here and we're paying all this money for administration and the building and all of that stuff to service the residents and explain to them why we need X amount of dollars of their tax dollars to do all this, with the result being Collinapolis. That's not a good look, and I don't have a complete solution to that. But it doesn't make us look very good when we're asking for X amount of dollars on the tax bill.
Oh, we'd like to acknowledge that Her Worship, Mayor Gail Smith, has joined us online. Counselor Knapp.
I would just like to make a statement that I would rather get the right information to the right people than have it strewed out among 3 different people and not have the right information.
Any other comments for 8.3? Town General Water Utility Financial Report as of the end of February 2026. Director of Finance Profit.
In your agenda package, you have income statements up to the end of February 2026. So for the town general, under revenue, one of the larger changes from the last statement that was prepared which was for December, is the $75,000 received from the province for the cost share program for paving. And then down under expenses, did have some additional RCMP invoicing come in, and I think that's pretty much one of the only things that changed on expenses. So we are, as of February 28th, 2026, we are showing a surplus of $536,000. But obviously, we are still, we're still in line with what we think the forecast to year end is going to be, of the $35,000 surplus. So it's really just timing. So don't get too excited. And then the water utility income statement is there as well, and it's pretty straightforward. Nothing significant changed from the statement last presented.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Director of Finance? 9.1, correspondence. March 24th, 2026, letter from Minister of Municipal Affairs, John A. McDonald, financial condition indicators.
So this was a response to the letter that council asked us to send regarding that one financial condition indicator, the residential tax effort one that relies on the median household income information from the census that's now 5 years old. So we sent a letter pointing that out, and this is the letter we got back. So it looks like the department's going to bring the suggestion of trying to address adjustments to the FCIs in between census periods to the, there's an FCI committee. So they're gonna bring that forward to the committee for review and discussion, and it says we'll hear if there's any recommendations arising from that process, we'll hear back as well as the rest of the municipal units.
Look at Middleton, changing the world.
Well, I took great comfort in that when I read it as well.
I was very pleased to see that. Doesn't hurt to ask, right? Doesn't hurt to point stuff out and say, look, this doesn't make sense to us, explain it to us. And they're saying, hey, that might be worthy of further discussion, so.
And hopefully, you know, we're like the little train that could, and hopefully that will blaze the trail for other municipal units. Thank you. Anything by members? My favorite part of the agenda. We're gonna start with Councillor Knapp.
I have nothing, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Archibald.
I'll take her spot. Two things, and it really is more of a question for Adam. And it's a curiosity that I came up with when reading the budget and with the environmental report that we just got. What type of paving are we planning to do for our sidewalks? Is it concrete or is it asphalt? You know?
I don't know the answer, but I can ask.
And the only reason I'm bringing it up is I know there is a carbon negative concrete by Shaw that's available, that it has a negative carbon footprint. And if there was any possibility of using that and possibly getting some federal environmental funds to help us with paving, is the only reason you bring it up. That if there was an option of doing carbon negative concrete for paving, could we get a subsidy or some money from the feds on that? Was a thought, not necessarily a good one. Secondly, and I mentioned it in the last meeting, the budget surpluses on the rare events that we have them. And I guess it wasn't really clear last time. It is not possible for us to do a rebate back of a previous year's budget surplus to ratepayers. Is that what I got the last time?
Not in the current year, no.
Okay, so, and is that just not possible because it's legislatively not allowed, or it's just something we've never done before, or it seems counterintuitive to me that we couldn't give a rebate back, you know, in future year to, given that we know exactly where money goes, because it's property, things that you can rebate it back to the property taxes on that. And it's a small thing that, you know, maybe it'll only be $50 per household, some years type thing, but I think we should look at a policy, and we're not gonna solve tonight. I think we should look into that in future things. So on the rare day or years where we do come up with a surplus through magic pixie dust and all the rest, it would be nice to give something back.
I just like to comment. I agree with what you're saying. I think that if we have a surplus at the end of the year, I think we get to the next fiscal budget period, that when it comes to tax rates, that to me, that would be where we would apply such a.
The only difficulty with that is that a lot of times our tax rates are accurate for our forecast budget. This year is a good example. We have a surplus, not by any great wonders. It's just that we got lucky with the billing from the RCMP. We're a little late, so that kind of thing, right? You know, so to adjust our tax rates lower, which I agree would be a wonderful thing, would be probably fiscally not the smartest thing to do, given that those are real expenses. They just didn't occur, right? So, but next year we're going to have those expenses, I think. But where we did save them this year, got a little bit of rebate, and paying it forward to the future bills in the year going forward would be a nice solution to kind of balance that out. And then you come up with a policy that says, hey, we've done that 3 years in a row, then we lower tax rates. Come up with a more stable policy or predictable policy on that. Just an idea.
Anything else, Councillor Archibald?
Nope, that's it. Shut up.
Councillor
Knapp.
Councillor Knapp.
Yeah, just to comment on your suggestion on what should happen to our extra money. I would like to see it, the town keep it, and then you get interest on it, and that interest comes back to help pay for other things other than taking it and giving $50 per the residents, and then the next following year, possibly have your taxes increase again.
Well, I think we should have a formal sit down and think a discussion on that is what I think we should bring that up and see what the options are that are available, kind of thing.
Good conversation. I just don't think we're gonna get there tonight.
No, and I
As
think
it was just earlier.
And I am done.
Counselor Bartlett,
I have nothing, Your worship.
Counselor Smith,
Couple of things. For several months now, I've checked on the updates and even more recently in March was assured, yep, we're gonna have it by the end of the month. We did not get our communication strategy by the end of the month.
I have it. I
Good.
just didn't send it to you yet. I did have it by the end of the month.
Okay, was I confused that you weren't going to give it to us too, or?
I just didn't want to send it out last week because you had this whole package triggered, so it's gonna go tomorrow.
I would appreciate that. I've been long awaiting it. One other thing that more or less came out today, but has happened in the past. When we communicate to the public, and most specifically, when we email the public that here is the links to the agenda packages, and those links don't work, residents get upset. I had one in my office today ranting and raving that the link that they got on Thursday, I guess it was a broken link. I understand we have a new website and things happen. But, and I went all through it on my computer and showed them how you can go to the website and find the agenda packages. The response I got from this particular individual was, that website's garbage. I don't know why you changed it. It's a piece of crap. I don't like it. I'm not going through all these steps. To me, it was all the same steps if you were going to the agenda packages from the website 2 weeks ago. I asked for those links to be resent to our email list today, and to my knowledge, it didn't get done. We have to do a better job of communicating and keeping our public in the loop. We serve them, we take their money to do better in this community. And they're showing a interest in what we do and they want to stay engaged. They come into YouTube now, Facebook Live before. They also had lots of comments about YouTube, didn't like that either, but I think we need to be mindful that they pay our salaries, so to speak, and they do. And that we need to keep them as engaged as humanly possible and not forget about them. That's all I have to say about that.
thank you. Anything else?
So,
Okay. Your worship, do you have anything to come before the meeting?
No, I'm having a lovely time right now.
we don't
I
want to
spent
hear
all
about
day shopping. I'm tired.
shopping all day and tired. Well,
Well, that is there are worse things, your worship.
There are. Good meeting.
And I'm gonna say I don't have anything to come before the meeting. So if is there any further business to come before the meeting? Hearing none, we'll show this meeting adjourned. But we will be moving into a special council meeting. And we're gonna call that meeting to order. And the first item on that agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda as circulated.
second,
Discussion? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried.
well-oiled machine. Thanks.
We're moving right along. New business 3.1 RFD 027-2026 special by-election Gayo Crocker.
This RFP was presented just less than an hour ago, so I won't go through it again. But there are several motions that need to be reread. And
I'll pick it off.
All right.
I'll move the council authorize expenditures for the June 2026 municipal election up to $10,386.
Second,
Discussion? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council gives authority to the CAO to appoint assistant returning officers.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Yeah,
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council agree to implement a fully electronic telephone and internet election with the electronic election platform provided by IntelliVote Systems, Inc. for the 2026 special by-election.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council set nomination day as Tuesday, May 19th, 2026.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council set the dates of the advanced polling period from Thursday, June 4th, 2026 to the close of voting on regular polling day of June 13th, 2026.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council authorizes the use of the Nova Scotia Permanent Registry of Voters provided by Elections Nova Scotia as a preliminary list of electors for the 2026 municipal elections in Middleton.
second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Fell asleep,
So,
so.
well, contrary minded? Motion carried. Scared me for a second.
I'll move the council agrees that in addition to the methods mandated by the Municipal Elections Act to notify the public of the preliminary list of electors and revision methods, that it be left of the discretion of the returning officer to determine additional notification mechanisms that will improve the accuracy of the electors list.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council authorize election staff to continue to amend the electors list database in conjunction with the electronic voting system up to and including regular election polling day.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I move council authorize the returning officer to conduct election education and offer information sessions for potential candidates.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move the council authorize the holding of the special by-election on Saturday, June 13th, 2026.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
Special, we have an election.
We're gonna have a special election. Three. 3.2 RFD 2028-2026 operating budget update for 2026-2027. Director of Finance, Prof.
Thank you. This was presented less than an hour ago, so I won't go through it again, but there is a motion that does need to be stated.
I'll move the town council approve version 4 of the 2026-2027 town general operating budget as presented with total expenditures of $5,095,585, a balanced budget of $0.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. This concludes our live streaming of today's council meeting. Our next meeting will be a town council meeting on Monday, April 20th, 2026. The agenda package will be posted on the town's website on Friday, April 17th. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or ideas that you'd like to have addressed during anything by citizens part of the agenda, please submit them to ea@town.middleton.ns.ca by noon on Monday, April 20th, 2026. Thank you for watching. If there's nothing else to come before the meetings, we'll show the meeting adjourned.